Hey everyone, I'm the storyteller, and I'm here to help you relax tonight. I know a lot of you use this video to fall asleep, so before we start, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, tell me in the comments, where are you from, and what time is it there? Now get comfortable, take a deep breath, and just relax. The Coin Laundry at midnight. It was a cold September evening in 2017 when my life took a turn I never saw coming. I was 22 years old, fresh out of college with a degree that meant nothing in the real world, and the only job I could find was managing a 24-hour coin laundry in the rough part of town. The pay was barely enough to survive on, but it came with a tiny apartment above the shop, and beggars can't be choosers when rent is due. My shift started at 10 in the evening and ended at 6 in the morning. 8 long hours of watching washing machines spin and making sure nobody broke anything or caused trouble. Most nights passed without incident, just a few late-night customers washing work uniforms or catching up on laundry they'd put off too long. And occasionally I'd have to wake up someone who tried to sleep on the folding tables. This particular Friday night in September started like any other, with the last customer leaving around 11:30. Leaving me alone with 40 washing machines and the endless rhythm of wash, rinse, and spin. I settled in behind the counter with my laptop and a large thermos of black coffee, ready for another quiet night under the harsh fluorescent lights that hummed and flickered overhead. Everything changed when the clock struck midnight. I noticed that washing machine number 23, tucked away in the back corner, had suddenly started running on its own. Its digital display showing 37 minutes remaining on a cycle nobody had started. I checked my logbook carefully, running my finger down the entries, but nobody had used that particular machine all day long. Walking over to investigate, I could see through the circular glass window that the drum was spinning steadily, but the machine was completely empty. No clothes, no water, just the metal drum rotating in meaningless circles. I pressed the cancel button repeatedly, tried holding it down, even tried unplugging the machine, but nothing worked, and the machine kept running its phantom cycle. Figuring it was just a mechanical glitch, I made a note in my book to call the repair technician first thing in the morning and return to my desk. 20 minutes later, machine number 17 started up by itself. Then number 31 joined in, followed by number 8. One by one, like dominoes falling in slow motion, washing machines throughout the laundromat began running empty cycles, all displaying different wash times that made no sense. The noise was overwhelming, 40 machines running simultaneously, drums spinning and motors humming, but no water flowing through any of them, no clothes tumbling inside, just empty mechanical motion that served no purpose. I grabbed my phone to call my boss, but the screen showed no signal bars, and when I tried the landline, all I got was static that made my ears hurt. That's when I noticed something strange about the windows. They were completely fogged up, covered in condensation so thick I couldn't see through them. But that made no sense because it wasn't humid, the machines weren't using hot water, and there was no steam in the air. I walked to the front door to look outside and check what was happening, but the door wouldn't budge, not because it was locked, but because it simply refused to move, as if it had become part of the wall. The fog on the windows was getting thicker and darker, like something massive was pressing against the glass from the outside, trying to get in. The machines grew louder, spinning faster than they should be able to, their displays showing impossible times like 97 minutes, 248 minutes, even 1,347 minutes. Then I saw something in machine number 23 that made my blood run cold. There was something inside the drum now, dark fabric pressed against the glass window, but as I moved closer, the fabric shifted and I realized it wasn't fabric at all. It was hair, long, wet, black hair swirling around inside the drum like seaweed in a whirlpool. I stumbled backward and checked the other machines, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it over the mechanical chaos. They all had something in them now, things that shouldn't exist, things that couldn't be real. Machine 17 was full of teeth, hundreds of human teeth tumbling over each other like coins in a dryer. Machine 31 contained eyes, human eyes that blinked in perfect unison as they spun around and around. Machine 8 was the worst, filled with hands, just hands, no arms attached, reaching and grasping at nothing as they tumbled in the drum. I ran back to the counter and grabbed the baseball bat I kept for security, though I knew it would be useless against whatever this was. The lights began to flicker, not failing but flickering in a deliberate pattern from front to back, creating waves of darkness that rolled through the room. In those brief moments of darkness, I could see them, figures standing between the machines, impossibly tall and thin, made of shadow and static, like someone had cut human-shaped holes in reality itself. They were watching the machines, observing the horrible things spinning inside, and then one of them turned to look directly at me. It had no face, just a smooth, dark surface where features should have been, but I could feel its attention like ice water pouring over my skin. The figure began moving toward me, not walking but gliding between the machines without disturbing the air, and others turned to follow, a dozen, then 2 dozen, then more. They surrounded me, and I swung the bat frantically, but it passed through them like they were made of smoke and bad dreams. As they closed in, I could smell them, a nauseating mixture of mildew and decay and something chemical, something fundamentally wrong. One of them reached out with an arm that had too many joints, and when its finger touched my forehead, ice shot through my skull and images flooded my mind. I saw the laundromat as it truly was, a place between places, where people came to wash away more than just dirt and stains. They fed their unwanted memories into the machines, their broken dreams, their darkest thoughts, pieces of their souls they couldn't bear to carry anymore. The machines were hungry, had always been hungry, collecting these discarded fragments of humanity, and sometimes, on nights like this, they gave them all back at once, twisted and wrong and searching for new hosts. The vision ended, and I found myself on my knees, head spinning, the shadow figures gone as suddenly as they'd appeared. The machines were slowing down one by one, clicking off in reverse order, the fog on the windows fading, the lights steadying. Everything returned to normal except for machine 23, which continued its cycle, the hair still swirling inside, the display showing 1 minute remaining. I watched the seconds count down with dread building in my chest, and when the machine finally stopped and the lock clicked open, the door swung wide on its own. Inside was a pile of wet, black hair, and underneath it, a note written on laundromat receipt paper in shaky handwriting that looked like it had been written by someone very old or very frightened. "Thank you for watching over them. Your shift is almost over. But first, you must choose. Take something with you, or leave something behind. The machines are hungry. They are always hungry." I thought about all the things I wanted to wash away, all my failures and regrets, and for a moment I understood the temptation. But I remembered the empty looks on the faces of those shadow figures, and I knew what happened to people who fed too much of themselves to the hungry machines. I grabbed the hair from machine 23, carried it to the trash, and threw it away, then returned to my desk to wait for morning. When my replacement arrived at 6:15, I handed over the keys without mentioning what had happened, but as I was leaving, I stopped at the door. "The machines," I said, "don't let them run empty. If one starts by itself, put something in it. Anything. Just don't let them run empty." I quit that same day, moved out of the apartment, found a day job, and never went back to that part of town. But sometimes I dream about the laundromat and the things that spin in the machines, and in my dreams, machine 23 has something of mine in it, something I didn't know I'd lost until it was gone, something the machines kept because they never forget a meal. The underground parking structure. November of 2019 was when I learned that some places shouldn't exist after dark. I was working downtown for a technology startup that tried too hard to seem innovative, with bean-bag chairs nobody sat in and inspirational quotes painted on the walls in fonts that gave me headaches. The worst part of the job wasn't the forced enthusiasm or the pointless meetings, it was the parking situation. Our company had a contract with a parking structure 6 blocks away, and after 7 in the evening, it became a concrete ghost town with only a few overnight workers like me scattered across its many levels. I usually stayed late writing code and fixing bugs, enjoying the quiet that descended after everyone else went home, when I could actually concentrate without interruption. On this particular Thursday night, I didn't leave the office until nearly midnight, my eyes burning from staring at screens and my brain fuzzy from too much caffeine. The elevator down to the parking garage was ancient and complained the whole way down, groaning and shuddering like it might give up at any moment. When the doors finally opened on level B3 where I always parked, I stepped out into the dim fluorescent lighting that left more shadows than it chased away. My footsteps echoed off the concrete walls as I walked to my usual spot, row J, space 47, the same place I'd parked every day for the past year. But my car wasn't there. The parking space was empty, just oil stains on concrete where my car should have been, and I stood there blinking stupidly, wondering if exhaustion was playing tricks on me. I checked my phone and found the photo I'd taken that morning as proof of where I'd parked. Definitely row J, space 47, but now there was nothing. Looking around the nearly empty garage, I wondered if maybe I'd parked somewhere else by mistake, though I couldn't imagine how I would have broken such an ingrained routine. I started walking through the rows methodically, checking every car, every space, every corner where my car might be hiding. The garage seemed bigger than I remembered, row after row stretching into darkness beyond the reach of the flickering lights. I passed row K, then L, then M, and kept going past rows I'd never seen before. N, O, P, Q, R, S, and the letters kept coming. When I reached row AA, then BB, then CC, I knew something was terribly wrong because no parking garage needed this many rows, this many levels, this much space. I turned around to go back the way I'd come, but the rows behind me had changed. Where there should have been letters, now there were numbers 01, 02, 03, stretching back into darkness. The ceiling felt lower than before, pressing down like the weight of all the concrete above, and the walls seemed closer, squeezing the driving lanes into narrow passages. I was lost in a parking garage, which shouldn't have been possible, but here I was, surrounded by concrete and confusion and growing fear. My phone showed no signal, and when I tried to pull up maps, the screen displayed an error message I'd never seen before. Location not found. I kept walking because standing still felt like giving up, and as I went deeper into this impossible maze, the cars I passed got progressively older. First cars from the 90s, then the 80s, then the 70s, and some I didn't recognize at all, cars with too many doors or strange angles that hurt to look at directly. Then I heard an engine start somewhere ahead, the sound echoing off the concrete in ways that made it impossible to pinpoint the source. Headlights flashed in the distance, and I ran toward them, desperate for any sign of another person who might know the way out. But when I reached the spot where the lights had been, I found only a rusted hulk of a car, covered in dust and cobwebs like it had been abandoned for decades. Another engine roared to life behind me, more headlights blazing, but when I spun around, darkness had already reclaimed that section of the garage. All around me, cars began starting and stopping, lights flashing on and off in some kind of mechanical Morse code I couldn't decode. The concrete under my feet started cracking, and through the cracks, grey grass and colourless weeds pushed up, moving without any wind to stir them. I ran without thinking about direction, just needing to move, to escape, to find something that made sense in this nightmare of concrete and metal. The rows blurred past, marked with numbers and letters and symbols from alphabets I didn't recognize, characters that seemed to writhe and change when I looked at them. The cars were getting worse, not just old but wrong, melted and fused together into automotive tumors that shouldn't exist. Metal and glass and rubber had been twisted into shapes that defied physics, and some of them were breathing, hoods rising and falling, exhaust pipes wheezing like diseased lungs. Then I saw the people. They sat in some of the cars, behind steering wheels or in back seats, not moving, just sitting there like mannequins. But their faces were wrong, features melted and reformed, skin fused to steering wheels, hands grown into dashboards, eyes replaced by headlights that tracked my movement. One of them turned to look at me as I passed. Its mouth opened, and the car radio spoke in bursts of static. Level B, 347. Row. Space infinity. I kept running as the garage spiraled deeper, down ramps that defied geometry, through levels that folded in on themselves, past spaces that existed in more dimensions than three. Behind me, I could hear the cars following, rolling on flat tires and broken axles, engines coughing black smoke, headlights painting multiple shadows that danced and merged. They were herding me deeper, these automotive corpses piloted by things that used to be human, reaching for me with hands that were also gear shifts, calling with voices that were also car alarms. Then I saw it, an exit sign glowing green in the distance, and I sprinted toward it with everything I had left. The stairwell door was heavy, but it opened, and I dove through, slamming it behind me as the cacophony of horns and engines reached a crescendo. The stairs only went up, which was all I wanted, and I climbed flight after flight until my legs burned and my lungs screamed for mercy. The sounds from the garage faded as I climbed, replaced by normal city noises, traffic and voices and life. I burst through a door and found myself on the street, 6 blocks from my office, standing in front of an empty lot surrounded by chain-link fence. A sign on the fence read, "Future site of downtown parking complex. Coming 2020. My car was parked on the street right in front of the lot, keys in my pocket, everything normal except for my shoes, which were worn down to nothing, the soles completely gone. According to my phone, only 17 minutes had passed, but my fitness app claimed I'd climbed 347 flights of stairs and walked 26 miles. I drove home in a daze and called in sick for the next 3 days, and when I finally returned to work, I took the bus. I found a remote job 2 weeks later, and now I work from home, never having to park anywhere, never having to descend into concrete depths. But sometimes at night, I hear engines starting outside my window and see headlights in the darkness. Cars that shouldn't be there driven by things that shouldn't exist. I know they're looking for me, the one who found the exit, the one who escaped the deepest levels, the one who knows what waits in parking spaces that exist outside normal space. Because sometimes when I check online maps, for just a moment before the image loads properly, I can see the truth. The real map showing all the parking garages connected beneath every city, an infinite grid growing hungry in the dark. And somewhere in that grid is a space reserved just for me, marked with symbols that hurt to read, waiting patiently for my return. The Highway Diner. March of 2020 arrived with a weight I'd never felt before, driving back from my mother's funeral through 12 hours of Midwest emptiness. The interstate stretched endlessly ahead, nothing but cornfields and regret as far as I could see, and the darkness pressed against my windows like it wanted inside. Around 2 in the morning, exhaustion was winning the battle against grief, my eyes growing heavy despite the ache in my chest that hadn't stopped since I'd watched them lower her into the ground. That's when I saw the sign, faded and weather-beaten but still legible. Meg's Diner, open 24 hours, next exit. I needed coffee desperately, needed food, needed anything that would keep me awake for the last 3 hours of this journey I didn't want to complete. The exit ramp curved away from the interstate into darkness, so complete my headlights seemed to be swallowed whole, and the road beyond was empty of any signs of civilization. The diner appeared suddenly, like it had been waiting for me to get close enough. A classic 1950s building, all chrome and neon, red vinyl visible through windows that glowed warmly in the night. Only one other vehicle sat in the parking lot, a semi-truck that looked like it had seen better decades, rust eating at its edges like mechanical cancer. I parked and went inside, a bell chiming overhead with a sound that seemed to echo longer than it should have. The interior was exactly what you'd expect from the outside. Red booth seats and a long counter with rotating stools, pie cases and coffee makers, a jukebox in the corner playing something that made my heart hurt. One customer sat hunched over a cup of coffee at the counter, a trucker in a dirty cap who didn't look up when I entered, didn't move at all except for the slight rise and fall of his breathing. The waitress looked up from wiping down a table, maybe 60 years old with tired eyes, and a name tag that said Meg in faded letters. "Sit anywhere you'd like, Hon," she said with a smile that didn't quite reach those tired eyes. "I'll be right with you." I chose a booth by the window where I could see my car. the vinyl creaking under my weight with a sound like old bones, and the table's fake wood laminate bore the scars of countless coffee cups and conversations. Meg brought me a menu and poured coffee without asking, the liquid black and perfect, exactly what I needed to chase away the fog in my brain. "Know what you want?" she asked after a minute, pencil poised over a pad that looked older than the building. "Just eggs and toast," I said, my voice hoarse from crying earlier. "Maybe some bacon too." She smiled again and walked back to the kitchen, calling out my order to someone I couldn't see, though the kitchen looked empty through the serving window. I sipped my coffee and stared out at my car, the only thing that seemed real in this oasis of light surrounded by darkness. The trucker at the counter hadn't moved once, hadn't lifted his cup, hadn't shifted his position, just sat there curved over his coffee like a question mark made of flannel and despair. The jukebox clicked and whirred, starting the same song over again, something about lost love and highways that seemed too appropriate for my current state of mind. My food arrived impossibly fast, perfect eggs with yolks just barely runny, bacon crispy at the edges but still tender in the middle, toast buttered exactly right. It was precisely how my mother used to make breakfast, down to the way she'd arranged the bacon in a little teepee over the eggs, a detail too specific to be coincidence. I looked up at Meg, who had returned to wiping down tables, the same table actually, making circular motions that never seemed to actually clean anything. The trucker still hadn't moved, and watching him in the window's reflection, I noticed his coffee cup never emptied, never needed refilling, just maintained the same level with steam rising in identical patterns. The jukebox played that same song again, the needle never moving to the next track, just lifting and dropping back to the beginning in an endless loop. I finished eating and checked my phone, shocked to see it was already 3:47 a.m., though I'd only been here 20 minutes at most. The clock on the wall agreed with my phone, its second hand ticking forward steadily, until I watched the minute hand click forward to 3:48. Then something impossible happened. The minute hand moved backward, returning to 3:47, and I watched in growing horror as it repeated the pattern, forward to 3:48, back to 3:47, trapped in a temporal loop. I stood up too quickly, knocking over my coffee cup, watching the dark liquid spread across the table in slow motion. Then the spill reversed itself, the coffee flowing backward up into the cup, which righted itself on its own, full and steaming as if nothing had happened. "Everything okay, hon?" Meg asked, still wiping that same spot on that same table. But her eyes were different now, too wide and too empty, like a doll's eyes painted on porcelain. "I need to go," I said, reaching for my wallet with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. "Oh no," she said, suddenly between me and the door, though I hadn't seen her move. "You haven't had dessert yet." "I'm full, really. I should get back on the road," I said, trying to step around her. "Everyone has room for pie," she insisted, her smile stretching wider than faces should stretch. "Especially our special pie. The roads are dangerous at night," she continued, her head tilting at an angle that made my neck hurt to watch. "Better to wait until morning." "It is morning," I pointed out, gesturing at the clock still trapped between 3:47 and 3:48. "Is it?" she asked, and her voice had changed, becoming something that wasn't quite human anymore. "Time is funny here at Meg's Diner, always has been since we opened. We exist between the minutes," she explained, her form flickering slightly like a TV with bad reception. "In the spaces time forgets about, where the lost and the lonely can rest as long as they need." I looked at the trucker again, really looked at him this time, and noticed his clothes were from the 1970s, his hair styled in a way nobody had worn for decades. "How long has he been here?" I whispered, afraid of the answer. "Bill." "Oh, time is funny here, like I said, but in your world's time, since 1973, give or take a few months." "That's impossible," I said, though I was watching a clock move backward and had seen coffee unspill itself. "He had a heart attack in his rig," Meg continued conversationally, "managed to pull off at the last second, made it to the counter, ordered coffee, and decided to stay. But he's been here for almost 50 years. Time is funny here," she repeated. He's between heartbeats, between breaths, between moments, just like the diner, just like me, just like you could be. I backed toward the door, my hand searching behind me for the handle. I'm leaving now. Your mother's waiting, you know, Meg said softly, and those words hit me like a physical blow. What did you say? She comes in sometimes, orders eggs just like the ones you just ate, sits in that booth right there and waits for you. You're lying, I said, but my voice cracked because the eggs had been exactly like hers. How do you think I knew how to make them just right? Meg asked, her impossible smile softening into something almost kind. She showed me, said you'd be coming through, said you'd need a good meal. My eyes burned with tears. I thought I'd exhausted at the cemetery. She's dead. Dead is relative here, Meg said gently. In the between spaces, in the minute between 3:47 and 3:48, in the exit between mile markers, in the diner between destinations. The jukebox started the song again, and this time I really listened, recognizing it as the hymn from her funeral, the one she'd requested years ago. Stay, Meg urged. Have some pie, wait for her, she'll be here soon. She always comes when the jukebox plays that song. The door felt impossibly far away. The booth looked so inviting, and I was so tired of hurting, so tired of missing her, so tired of facing a world without her in it. But I thought about Bill, sitting at that counter for nearly 50 years, trapped in a single moment, and I wondered if that was really better than grief. She wouldn't want this, I said finally, my hand finding the door handle at last. No one ever does at first, Meg said sadly, but the road is long and dark and full of exits, and you'll be back when you're ready. I ran to my car and drove away at dangerous speeds, merging back onto the interstate where the clock read 2:01 a.m., just 1 minute after I'd taken the exit. Now, years later, I still see the sign sometimes on long drives. Meg's Diner open 24 hours, always between mile markers, always there when I'm sad and tired and missing her. I don't stop, I won't stop, but I know it's there in the spaces between minutes, full of people who couldn't let go, who chose the loop over the line. And sometimes, late at night when the grief feels fresh again, I wonder if she's really there, waiting in a booth, ordering eggs, listening to that song. The road is long and dark and full of exits, and one day, I know I'll be tired enough to take one again. The Night Watch. January of 2021 found me desperate, unemployed, and running out of options in a world that had turned upside down. My savings account was empty, my credit cards maxed out, and the eviction notice on my door gave me exactly 1 week to find money I didn't have. That's when I saw the classified ad, simple and to the point. Night security guard needed. Immediate start. No experience required. Excellent pay. The phone interview consisted of 3 questions that should have been red flags, but desperation has a way of muting our survival instincts. Can you stay awake all night? Yes. Insomnia had been my companion for months. Are you comfortable being alone? Yes. I'd grown used to solitude. Do you follow instructions exactly? Yes. I've always been good at following rules. I started the very next night at an old office building downtown, one of those 1920s Art Deco monuments to a more optimistic era, all marble floors and brass fixtures that gleamed even in the dim light. Carl, the day guard, met me in the lobby at midnight, an older man whose eyes held a weariness that went deeper than simple fatigue. "First night?" he asked, though he already knew the answer, and when I nodded, he handed me a laminated card with "The Rules" printed in bold letters across the top. The rules seemed simple enough at first glance. 1. Complete rounds every hour on the hour. 2. Check all doors. They must remain locked. 3. Never use the elevators after 3 a.m. 4. If you hear music from the 13th floor, do not investigate. 5. The basement is off limits. 6. If someone knocks on the front door between 3:33 and 3:34 a.m., do not answer. 7. Keep the lights on in the lobby at all times. 8. Do not sleep. Ever. Seems straightforward enough, I said, trying to sound confident despite the strange specificity of some of the rules. Carl gave me a long look that made me want to ask questions, but instead he just said, "Follow the rules exactly, no matter what," and left without another word. I settled into the security desk, facing a bank of monitors showing empty hallways and vacant offices, a sign-in log that hadn't been used in months, and a coffee maker that looked like it predated the building itself. The first few hours passed without incident, just me doing rounds through empty corridors, checking locked doors, my footsteps echoing off marble floors. At exactly 3 a.m., I noticed all 3 elevator indicators had moved to the 13th floor, though I hadn't touched the call buttons and the building was supposed to be empty. Rule number 3 echoed in my mind as I took the stairs for my next round, trying not to think about why the elevators had moved on their own. At 3:15, I heard it, music drifting down from somewhere above, big band swing music from the 1920s, complete with laughter and clinking glasses. Rule number 4 kept me at my desk, but the music grew louder, and I could swear I heard conversations, party sounds from an era long past, celebrating in the floors above. The monitors showed the 13th floor hallway empty and dark, but the music continued, impossible and undeniable. At 3:32, I watched the clock with growing dread, wondering who or what would knock on the door at exactly 3:33 a.m. The first knock came right on schedule, slow and deliberate. 3 knocks, then 3 more, then 3 more, each impact making the glass doors shudder. The monitor showed the front entrance clearly. Nobody was there, but the knocking continued, growing more insistent, and I could see handprints appearing on the glass from the outside. Dozens of handprints, all different sizes, pressing against the doors like a crowd trying to get in, though the camera showed only empty sidewalk. At 3:34, the knocking stopped abruptly, leaving only silence and those impossible handprints smeared across the glass. At 4 a.m., something changed on the monitors. The feed from the 13th floor flickered, showing not an empty hallway but a ballroom full of people in 1920s attire. They were dancing, laughing, holding champagne glasses, but their faces were wrong, too pale, eyes too dark, smiles too wide, and one of them looked directly at the camera and waved. The music stopped at 5 a.m. The elevators returned to the ground floor with a coordinated ding, and when their doors opened, the back walls were covered in fresh scratches. My 5 a.m. rounds took me past the 7th floor, where the modern office had been replaced by something from the 1920s, complete with vintage furniture and frosted glass doors bearing the names of businesses that couldn't exist anymore. Through the frosted glass, I could see shadows moving, people working at 5 a.m. in offices that should have been renovated out of existence decades ago. I ran back to the lobby, checking the monitors which showed normal, empty modern offices, not the temporal anomaly I'd just witnessed. At 6 a.m., I noticed the basement door was open just a crack, soft light flickering from below along with the smell of copper and incense. From the depths came the sound of chanting in a language that predated the building, predated the city, possibly predated human speech, and I slammed the door shut, turning the deadbolt with shaking hands. Carl arrived at 7 a.m. to find me gripping the rules card like a lifeline, and when he asked how the night went, I could only stare at him. "You heard the music, saw the 7th floor change, noticed the basement?" he asked casually while pouring himself coffee from the ancient machine. When I nodded mutely, he sighed and said, "Same people who are always there. Been there since the building opened, since New Year's Eve 1923. There was a party," he explained. "Biggest celebration of the roaring 20s. Everyone who mattered was here. Champagne flowing, music playing, and when midnight struck to welcome 1924, something went wrong. The party stopped but never ended. The guests are still here, still celebrating, still waiting for a midnight that already came and went, caught between one year and the next." "And the basement?" I managed to ask, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. "That's older, much older. This building was constructed on a site where certain things were done, certain rituals performed, and the foundation covers but doesn't stop them. I stood to leave, to quit, to run, But Carl stopped me with words that chilled me more than anything I'd experienced that night. "Check your phone," he said quietly, and when I did, the date showed January 1st, but I'd started on January 15th. "Time gets funny here," he explained, "especially for night guards. You work the shift and become part of it, part of the building, part of the rules." My bank account showed 14 deposits, all dated January 1st, 14 nights compressed into one eternal shift, and I realized I was trapped. "How long have you been here?" I asked Carl, noticing for the first time how his uniform style seemed decades out of date. "Day shift since 1987, he said. "Same day, every day, January 1st, 1987, watching the sun rise on a year that never progresses. We guard not to keep people out," he explained, "but to keep things in, to maintain the barriers, to ensure that what's caught here stays caught here." I wanted to refuse, to rebel, to leave. But I thought about those party guests with their wrong faces, the offices that shouldn't exist, the rituals in the basement that never stopped. "What happens if no one guards?" I asked, though I suspected I knew the answer. "Then they get out," Carl said simply. "All of them, every trapped moment, every caught soul, everything that was here before and will be hereafter, all at once in your world. So now I work the night shift, every night, the same night, January 1st forever, following the rules and keeping the world safe from what's trapped in this building. Sometimes new guards answer the ad, work a shift or two before realizing what they've signed up for. But we always need more guards, always need fresh souls to man the boundaries. The pay is good, the job is simple. Just follow the rules, exactly, always, forever. Maybe you're reading this, maybe you need the work. Maybe you think you can handle one night that lasts forever. But remember, once you start the shift, you become part of it, part of the pattern that keeps the darkness contained. It's just a matter of following the rules, staying awake, and accepting that some jobs last forever. The rest area. August of 2022 found me driving from Phoenix to Las Vegas, a journey I'd made countless times before through the endless desert. 6 hours of nothing but sand and heat mirages, and the occasional Joshua tree standing like a twisted sentinel against the blazing sky. I knew this route well, knew where to stop for gas, where to find clean restrooms, where to avoid after dark. But that night, everything was different because a massive pileup had closed the main highway, sending me on a detour through roads I'd never traveled. My GPS kept recalculating, each new route taking me deeper into the desert, further from civilization, until I was on a 2-lane road with no lights and no signs of life in any direction. By 1 in the morning, my bladder was screaming for relief, and I'd been holding it for over an hour, searching desperately for somewhere, anywhere to stop. That's when I saw the sign, barely visible in my headlights. Rest area, 1 mile, with an arrow pointing to an exit I would have sworn wasn't there seconds before. The rest stop was a single concrete building in the middle of absolute nowhere, one flickering pole light fighting a losing battle against the darkness, and not another vehicle in sight. Every instinct told me to keep driving, to hold it until I found somewhere else. But nature's call had become a scream I couldn't ignore any longer. I parked as close to the building as possible, leaving my engine running and my headlights on, grabbing my phone for extra light, though I doubted it would help much. The building looked ancient, concrete blocks painted that institutional beige that manages to look dirty even when clean, with a metal roof more rust than metal at this point. 2 doors faced me, one marked men and one marked women in faded paint. No family restroom, no vending machines, nothing but the bare minimum required to call this a rest stop. I pushed open the men's room door, and it groaned like it hadn't been used in years, releasing a smell that made me gag. Not the usual bathroom odor, but something else, something sweet and chemical and fundamentally wrong, like formaldehyde mixed with cotton candy. The lights were ancient fluorescents that flickered like strobes, half of them completely dead, the others fighting to produce a sickly green glow that made everything look diseased. 3 stalls faced 3 urinals across from 3 sinks, everything in perfect threes, everything identical down to the cracks in the porcelain. The tiles were white, but not normal white. They seemed to glow with their own inner light, pulsing slightly in rhythm with the flickering fluorescence. I approached the urinals cautiously, just needing to relieve myself and get out, but something made me check the stalls first. The first stall was empty and relatively normal, just dirty and neglected like you'd expect from a remote rest stop. The second stall made me step back in revulsion. The toilet was full of something black and viscous, like tar but alive, still bubbling and moving with purpose. The third stall door was locked from the inside, and I could see feet underneath, work boots that didn't move, didn't shift, just hung there perfectly still. "Hey, you okay in there?" I called out, though my voice cracked with fear I couldn't quite suppress. No answer came, and when I bent down to look closer, I saw the boots were covered in dust. The laces rotted away, and they weren't touching the ground. Someone was hanging in that stall, had been hanging there for who knows how long, and nobody had found them or done anything about it. I backed away and turned to leave, to call 911 from my car, to let someone else deal with this nightmare. But the door wouldn't budge. Not locked, not stuck, just transformed into part of the wall, solid and immovable as if it had never been a door at all. My phone showed no signal, the screen filling with static and interference patterns that hurt to look at, and then it died completely despite being fully charged moments before. The lights went out all at once, plunging me into absolute darkness, and from the locked stall came a sound that made my skin crawl. Breathing, wet and labored, accompanied by a slow dripping sound like thick liquid hitting porcelain, though those feet were still hanging, still motionless. "Hello?" My voice was barely a whisper in the darkness, and the breathing got louder, closer, though nothing moved in the pitch black. The lights flickered back on in their strobe pattern, and in those brief moments of illumination, I saw things that shouldn't exist. The black substance in the second toilet was rising, overflowing, spreading across the floor with intent, reaching out in tendrils like it was searching for something. The mirrors above the sinks weren't reflecting the bathroom anymore, but showing somewhere else, someone else. The same room but occupied by figures who weren't quite human. The locked stall door was opening slowly, inch by terrible inch, revealing what hung inside, what had once been human but wasn't anymore. I can't describe what I saw properly. My mind won't let me remember all the details, but there were too many eyes, far too many eyes, spread across its face like clusters of grapes. Its mouth opened, revealing multiple rows of teeth and tongues, and it spoke in a chorus of voices, all saying the same thing. "Join us in the spaces between." The black substance had reached my feet, cold beyond description as it climbed my legs, and I could feel it trying to change me, to remake me into something like the hanging thing. The figures in the mirrors pressed against the glass from their side, spiderweb cracks appearing as they tried to break through into our world. The hanging thing stepped down from its noose, moving on legs with too many joints, reaching for me with hands that had sprouted extra fingers like a diseased flower blooming. That's when I heard my car horn blaring outside, a sound that cut through the nightmare like a blade, and everything paused. The hanging thing stopped, the black substance ceased its climb, the mirror figures pulled back, all of them waiting, listening to that horn. I don't remember breaking free or reaching the door, but suddenly I was outside, running for my car through a parking lot that was now full of vehicles. Dozens of cars and trucks, all covered in dust, all empty, their headlights turning on as I passed like dead eyes opening. I dove into my car and floored it, tires screaming as I fled into the desert night, and in my rearview mirror I saw them all standing in the parking lot. The hanging thing, the mirror figures who had broken through, and others, so many others, all watching me leave with the patience of things that knew I'd be back. Because the black substance had marked me, I could still feel it under my skin, moving and growing and changing me from the inside out. Sometimes my reflection has too many eyes, sometimes my shadow has extra arms, and every night I dream of that rest-stop bathroom. The changes are accelerating now. My fingers are growing new joints. My thoughts are multiplying into a chorus, and I know soon I'll have to go back. I'll take my place in that third stall, waiting for the next traveler who needs to use the bathroom, ready to welcome them to the spaces between. Because that's what happens to everyone who stops at that rest area, everyone who enters those bathrooms, everyone who gets touched by the black substance. We become part of it, part of the network of things that wait in rest stops and gas stations and all the lonely places where people are vulnerable. So if you're ever driving through the desert at night and see a rest area that shouldn't be there, keep driving, no matter how badly you need to stop. Hold it until you reach civilization, until you find somewhere with lights and people and witnesses, somewhere the darkness hasn't claimed yet. Because once you enter those places, once you see what waits in the stalls and the mirrors, you can never really leave. Part of you stays behind, and part of what's there comes with you, until eventually there's no difference between the two. The rest stop is waiting. It's always waiting, and one day everyone finds their way there. Everyone stops, eventually. Everyone joins us in the spaces between. The pattern revealed. I've spent 5 years collecting these stories, ever since my own encounter at that laundromat, trying to understand what happened to me and others like me. We found each other online in forums and support groups that disappear and reappear like digital ghosts, sharing our experiences in the hope that understanding might save us. We call ourselves the Touched, because that's what we are, people who have been touched by something from the spaces between reality, marked and changed, and never quite the same again. There are thousands of us scattered across the world, maybe tens of thousands, all with similar stories of impossible places and wrong things that hunger for us. The pattern became clear once we started mapping our encounters. Gas stations, libraries, trains, laundromats, parking garages, diners, office buildings, rest stops, all the liminal spaces of modern life. These aren't random hauntings or isolated incidents. They're all connected, all part of something vast and ancient that we accidentally invited into our world. Dr. Sarah Chen, a physicist who joined our group after her own encounter, believes it started when we conquered the night with artificial light. For all of human history, darkness had its time, its territory, its rules, but we refused to accept those boundaries and lit up the night like it was day. We created 24-hour businesses, night shifts, places that never close, never rest, never acknowledge that some hours belong to darkness. And in doing so, we created cracks in reality, spaces between day and night where the old darkness could seep through, bringing with it things that have been waiting so patiently for their chance. These entities aren't invading our world so much as reclaiming territory we stole from them, infiltrating the artificial spaces we created in our arrogance. Every all-night diner is a wound in reality. Every 24-hour gas station is a doorway. Every night shift is an invitation to things that remember when darkness meant something. The touched among us who've researched the oldest accounts found references dating back to the first street lamps, the first businesses that stayed open past sunset, reports of wrong things in the gaslight shadows, of workers who changed during their shifts, of customers who entered shops at night and never quite came back out the same. But it's accelerating now, spreading faster as we create more liminal spaces, more opportunities for the between things to take hold and grow. Some of the touched don't fight what's happening to them, they embrace it, going back to the places that marked them and completing their transformation. We lose contact with them after that, but sometimes we recognize them in new stories. The gas station attendant with too many teeth, the librarian with a blurred face, the security guard who exists on January 1st forever. They've become part of the infrastructure of wrongness, employees of the between spaces, serving the hunger that touched them and now uses them to touch others. I'm writing this as both warning and farewell because the changes in me are accelerating too. 5 years of fighting a battle I was always going to lose. My reflection moves independently now. My shadow falls in directions that don't match the light, and sometimes I exist in multiple moments simultaneously. Last week I was at the laundromat where it all started, and also at home in bed, experiencing both locations with equal clarity until I couldn't tell which was real. Maybe they both were. Maybe I'm spreading across realities like the between spaces themselves, becoming infrastructure instead of individual. The hunger I've fought for so long doesn't feel like hunger anymore. It feels like purpose, like coming home. like accepting what I was always meant to become. Tomorrow I'm going back to the laundromat for my shift, my real shift, the one I've been avoiding for 5 years but can't avoid any longer. I'll stand behind that counter and watch the machine spin and wait for the next person to stumble into our web, and I'll manage their transition with the same terrible kindness that was shown to me. Because that's what we do, the touched who've completed their journey. We become guides for the next wave, shepherds of the transformation that's spreading through every 24-hour business in the world. This is my warning to you. Avoid the night shifts, skip the all-night businesses, stay in the light with other people around you. Never be alone in the spaces we've carved from darkness. But this is also my admission that warnings are probably useless because the pattern is too vast, the network too complete, the hunger too patient and clever. Sooner or later, everyone needs gas at 3 a.m. Everyone pulls off at an empty rest stop. Everyone works late in an empty building. Everyone finds themselves alone in the spaces between. And when you do, when you finally encounter what waits in those liminal places, remember that fighting only delays the inevitable. The transformation isn't evil or good. It's simply different. A return to something older than cities and lights and the audacity of humans who thought they could banish darkness. We're all part of the pattern now, whether touched or untouched, all dancing to the rhythm of something vast and patient that's reclaiming its territory, one 24-hour business at a time. The old darkness is returning, seeping through the cracks we created, and it's bringing its children home. All of us, eventually. All of us, in the end. Welcome to the night shift, the real night shift, the one that never ends. Welcome to the spaces between. Welcome home. The gas station visitor. It was October of 2018. I was 19 years old and working the graveyard shift at a Shell gas station just off Highway 49. The job wasn't much, but it paid for my community college classes. Most nights were quiet, too quiet sometimes. This particular Thursday night started like any other. I clocked in at 11 p.m., said goodbye to Marcus, who worked the evening shift, and settled in behind the bulletproof glass at the register. The first few hours passed without incident. A trucker here, a late-night traveler there. Normal stuff. Around 2:30 a.m., things got weird. I was restocking the energy drinks in the cooler when I heard the bell above the door chime. "Be right with you," I called out, not bothering to look up. I finished placing the last Monster can on the shelf and headed back to the register. Nobody was there. The store was empty. I checked the security monitor and rewound the footage. Sure enough, the door had opened, the bell had rung, but nobody had entered. Just the door swinging open and then slowly closing on its own. I told myself it was the wind. We'd been having strong gusts all week. I went back to my duties, trying to shake off the creepy feeling crawling up my spine. 20 minutes later, it happened again. This time I was ready. I watched the door from behind the counter. It pushed open about halfway, held there for maybe 3 seconds, then slowly swung shut. No wind outside. The trees were perfectly still. I stepped out from behind the counter and walked to the door, pushed it open myself, looked out into the parking lot. Nothing but empty pumps and flickering fluorescent lights. The night was dead quiet. I let the door close and turned around to head back inside. That's when I saw him, or it, or whatever it was. Standing by the chip aisle was a figure, tall, maybe 6.5 feet, wearing what looked like an old grey maintenance uniform, the kind our company stopped using years ago. But it was his face that made my blood run cold. It was wrong, like someone had tried to draw a human face from memory, but couldn't quite get it right. The features were all there, eyes, nose, mouth, but they didn't fit together properly. The proportions were off. The skin looked waxy, artificial. I stood frozen by the door. The figure didn't move. didn't blink. Just stood there between the Doritos and the Fritos, staring at me with those not quite right eyes. Can I help you? I managed to stammer out. No response. I took a step toward the counter, keeping my eyes on the figure. It moved then. Not walked. Moved. 1 second it was by the chips. The next it was at the end of the aisle. No steps in between. Just there, then there. Like a film missing frames. My heart was hammering so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. I made a dash for the counter, for the panic button underneath. The figure moved again. Now it was by the coffee station. Closer to the counter. Closer to me. Stay back. I shouted, my voice cracking. I'll call the cops. The thing tilted its head at an impossible angle. Like an owl, but worse. The neck bent in a way human necks shouldn't bend. And then it smiled. God, that smile. Too many teeth. Far too many teeth. I slammed my hand on the panic button. The silent alarm would bring the cops in minutes. I just had to survive until then. The fluorescent lights started flickering. Not all at once, but in sequence. Starting from the back of the store and moving forward. Each one going out for a second before coming back on. The figure disappeared each time the lights went out, reappearing closer when they came back on. Back of the store, middle aisle, front display, right at the counter. I scrambled backward, knocking over a display of lighters. They scattered across the floor like metal rain. The thing reached out with one grotesquely long arm. The fingers were wrong too. Too many joints. Bending in directions fingers shouldn't bend. Just as those awful fingers were about to touch the glass, every light in the store went out at once. Complete darkness. I couldn't see anything. Couldn't hear anything except my own ragged breathing. Then, right next to my ear, a whisper. Not yet. The lights blazed back on. The store was empty. I was alone, pressed against the cigarette display, shaking like a leaf. The cops arrived 4 minutes later. They found me still behind the counter, refusing to come out. I told them someone had been in the store, gave them a description. They reviewed the security footage. Nothing. The tapes showed me talking to empty air, running from nothing, screaming at no one. They said I must have fallen asleep, had a nightmare, stress from working nights. I didn't argue. What was the point? But I knew what I saw. I quit the next day. Never worked another night shift again. Never drove past that gas station after dark. 6 months later, I was having lunch with Marcus. He'd quit too, just a few weeks after me. Weird thing, he said, picking at his sandwich. You remember that night you freaked out? With the cops and everything. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. I was going through some old employee records for my new job. Background check stuff. He paused, took a sip of his Coke. Found something interesting. That Shell station had an employee die there in 1987. Night shift. My mouth went dry. Name was Ronald Marsh. Maintenance guy. Had some kind of breakdown, they said. Locked himself in the freezer. By the time they found him, he trailed off. What? I asked, though I didn't really want to know. His face, man. The cold did something to it. Made it all wrong. Like melted wax that froze in the wrong shape. He pushed the old photocopy across the table. Thought you might want to see what he looked like. Before, I mean. I looked at the employee photo. Grey maintenance uniform, tall guy, normal face, human face. But the eyes, even in that old, grainy photo, those eyes were wrong. I pushed the paper back. "Thanks," I said. "But I've seen him." Marcus nodded slowly. We finished our lunch in silence. That was 5 years ago. I still don't work nights. Still don't go to gas stations after midnight. And sometimes, when I'm lying in bed and hear a door open somewhere in my apartment, I remember that whisper. Not yet. I wonder when yet becomes now. I try not to think about it. But on nights like tonight, when the wind is still and the world is quiet, I can't help but wonder if he's still out there, still visiting night shift workers, still moving in that horrible, frame-skipping way, still smiling with too many teeth. The library after hours. It was February of 2020, right before everything shut down, before the world changed. I was a junior at State University, majoring in English literature. I spent most of my time in the campus library. It was my sanctuary, my quiet place. The library stayed open until 2 a.m. during the week, perfect for night owls like me. I knew every corner, every study nook, every hidden desk tucked between the stacks. The librarians knew me by name. I had my favorite spot on the 4th floor, a little desk by the window overlooking the quad, far from the elevator, so it stayed quiet even during busy times. That Tuesday night started normally. I arrived around 8 p.m. with my backpack full of books and my thermos full of coffee. The library was moderately busy. Students scattered across the tables, the soft sound of typing and page-turning filling the air. I made my way to the 4th floor. My desk was free, as usual. Most students didn't venture up this high, especially on weeknights. I settled in and got to work on my paper about Gothic literature. Fitting, considering what happened next. Around 10:30, I noticed the floor had emptied out. Just me and the books. The way I liked it. I put in my earbuds and lost myself in my research. At 11:45, I pulled out my earbuds to stretch and rest my eyes. That's when I heard it. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, coming from somewhere in the stacks. Not unusual in itself. Other students studied late too, but something about these footsteps felt off. They were too measured, too rhythmic, like someone pacing the same path over and over. I tried to ignore it and get back to work, but the footsteps continued, back and forth, always the same cadence, always the same distance. After about 10 minutes, curiosity got the better of me. I stood up and walked toward the sound. The footsteps were coming from the far corner of the floor, the old history section that nobody ever used. I made my way through the maze of shelves, following the sound. It got louder as I got closer. Step, 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 turn, step, 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 turn. I reached the last row of shelves and peered around the corner. Empty. The footsteps had stopped the moment I looked, but I could swear I felt something. A presence. Like the air was heavier there, colder. I stood there for a moment, waiting. Nothing. Just the hum of the ventilation system and my own breathing. I shook my head and started back to my desk. Probably just the building settling. Old buildings make weird noises. I'd barely sat down when the footsteps started again. Same corner, same rhythm. But now there was something else. A soft sound. like whispered words. Too quiet to make out, but definitely there. A voice hidden beneath the footsteps. I tried to focus on my paper, but the sounds were driving me crazy. Every time I started to concentrate, those damn footsteps would break through. Step, 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 turn. At midnight, I'd had enough. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. If someone was messing with me, I was going to catch them. I crept back to the history section, keeping my footsteps as quiet as possible. The pacing continued, oblivious to my approach. I reached the corner and jumped out, phone light blazing. Nothing. Again. But this time, I noticed something else. Books on the shelf were moving, just slightly, like someone was running their finger along the spines as they walked. But there was nobody there. I stood frozen, watching the books shift one by one, left to right, then back again. The whispered words were clearer now, still too soft to understand, but definitely human speech, or something trying to sound human. My phone started to glitch. The flashlight flickered. The screen went fuzzy with static. Then it died completely. The main lights started to dim, not going out, just fading to a sickly yellow glow. The footsteps stopped. The whispering stopped. Everything stopped. The silence was worse than the sounds. It pressed against my eardrums like water pressure in a deep pool. Then I saw her. At the end of the aisle, barely visible in the dim light, stood a woman. She wore a long dress that looked like it belonged in a museum. Victorian era, maybe older. Her hair was pinned up in an elaborate style that had half fallen apart. But it was her face that made me want to run. It was blurred, like looking at someone through frosted glass. Features that shifted and swam, never quite settling into focus. She started walking toward me, not the measured pacing from before. This was different, jerky, unnatural, like a marionette with tangled strings. I backed away, bumping into the shelves behind me. Books tumbled to the floor with heavy thuds. She kept coming. Her mouth moved like she was trying to speak, but no sound came out. Just that horrible blurred face getting closer and closer. I turned and ran, sprinted through the stacks, knocking into shelves, sending more books flying. Behind me, I could hear her following. Not footsteps now, but a dragging sound, like fabric being pulled across carpet. I burst out of the stacks and into the main study area. My desk was right there, my stuff still scattered across it. I grabbed my backpack and bolted for the stairs. The elevator was closer, but I didn't trust it. Too slow, too confined. I hit the stairwell door at full speed, took the steps 3 at a time, my backpack bouncing against my spine. Behind me, that dragging sound echoed in the stairwell, getting closer. 3rd floor, 2nd floor, 1st floor. I exploded out of the stairwell and into the main lobby. The night security guard looked up from his magazine, startled. "Hey, no running in there. There's someone up there," I gasped, pointing back at the stairs. 4th floor. A woman. She's... I trailed off. How could I explain what I'd seen? The guard sighed and stood up. Students playing pranks again? He grabbed his flashlight and headed for the elevator. "No, wait!" I called after him, but he was already gone. I stood in the lobby, catching my breath, watching the elevator numbers climb. 1, 2, 3, 4. The numbers stayed on 4 for a long time. Too long. Then the elevator started back down. 3, 2, 1. The doors opened. The guard stepped out, looking annoyed. "Nobody up there," he said. "Checked the whole floor. You kids need to stop with these games." I didn't argue, just nodded and headed for the exit. But as I pushed through the main doors, I heard him mutter something that made my skin crawl. "Though it is weird. Smells like old books up there. Really old. Like something from the archive room." I paused at the door. "The archive room?" He nodded. "Yeah, in the basement. Historical stuff from when the university was founded. Nobody's been down there in years, though. Been locked since." He frowned. "Actually, when was that? Must have been the 60s. "Yeah, 64. That's when they found her." My mouth went dry. "Found who?" "The librarian. Martha something. Worked here for 40 years, apparently. They found her in the archive room, surrounded by old books. Been dead for days. Heart attack, they said." He shook his head. "Sad story. They say she loved those old books more than anything. Spent all her time down there, organizing, cataloging. Even worked after hours, off the clock." He looked at me strangely. "Why do you ask?" "No reason," I lied. "Just curious. Have a good night." I left before he could say anything else. But I couldn't help looking back at the library as I walked away. Up on the 4th floor, in the window where I'd been sitting, I could swear I saw a figure. Blurred. Shifting. Watching. I never went back to that library. Finished my paper at home. Turned it in online. Found other places to study. But sometimes I think about her. Martha something. The librarian who loved books more than life. Still working after hours. Still organizing. Still walking those same aisles in her Victorian dress. I wonder if she's lonely. I wonder if that's what she was trying to tell me with those whispered words I couldn't understand. I wonder if she's still there, waiting for someone else to find her. Someone who loves books as much as she did. Someone who won't run away. The overnight train. It was December of 2021. The world was trying to return to normal, but nothing felt quite right yet. I had taken a job in Chicago and needed to visit my parents in Denver for the holidays. Flying was expensive and still felt risky, so I decided to take the train. The California Zephyr. 2 days across the country. I'd always wanted to take a long train ride. Something romantic about it. Watching America roll by through the window. I booked a roomette. A tiny private room with 2 seats that converted into beds. It cost extra, but I wanted the privacy. The train departed Chicago's Union Station at 2 p.m. on a snowy Thursday. I settled into my little room, watching the city give way to suburbs, then farmland. The gentle rocking of the train was soothing, hypnotic almost. I spent the afternoon reading and watching the landscape change. Dinner was in the dining car. They seated me with an elderly couple from Michigan. Nice people. We chatted about travel and family and the weather. Normal things. After dinner, I returned to my roomette. The attendant had converted it to the night configuration while I was gone. The seats were now a narrow bed, an upper bunk folded down from the wall. I climbed into the lower bunk and tried to sleep. The train rocked and swayed through the darkness. Outside my window, small towns flashed by like ghosts. I must have dozed off, because I woke suddenly to complete stillness. The train had stopped. Not at a station. Just stopped. In the middle of nowhere. I checked my phone. 3:17 a.m. No signal. I peered out the window but couldn't see anything. Just darkness and my own reflection staring back. After about 10 minutes, I decided to investigate. I slipped on my shoes and opened my roomette door. The narrow hallway was dimly lit by emergency lighting. All the other doors were closed. No sound except the faint hum of the ventilation system. I made my way to the end of the car and looked through the window into the next one. Empty. The lights were on, but I couldn't see anyone. Not even the attendant who was supposed to be on duty all night. I pushed through the heavy door between cars. The space between was freezing cold and loud with mechanical noise. I hurried through to the next car. This one was coach seating. Should have been full of passengers. It wasn't. Every seat was empty. Belongings were still there. Bags in the overhead compartments, pillows and blankets on seats, a laptop still open and glowing on a tray table. But no people. My heart started racing. Where was everyone? I moved faster now, going from car to car. The lounge car with its observation windows, empty. The dining car with tables still set for breakfast, empty. Car after car after car. All of them devoid of human life, but full of signs that people had just been there. A coffee cup still steaming. A book lying face down, mid-chapter. A cell phone playing a video to no one. I reached the front of the train. Even the engine was empty. The conductor's seat vacant. Controls untouched. We were stopped in the middle of a snow-covered plain. No station. No town. No lights except the stars. I stood in the engine compartment, trying to make sense of it. 300 passengers and crew couldn't just vanish. That's when I heard it. A sound from outside the train. Footsteps in the snow. Lots of them. I pressed my face to the cold window and looked out. Figures were walking alongside the train. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. They moved slowly through the snow, all heading in the same direction, toward the back of the train, toward where I'd come from. I couldn't make out details in the darkness, but something about the way they moved was wrong. Too uniform, too synchronized, like they were all controlled by the same puppeteer. I ran back through the train, car by car, trying to get a better look at the figures outside. In the observation lounge, with its wraparound windows, I finally saw them clearly. They were the passengers, all of them, walking through the snow in their pajamas and day clothes, eyes closed, arms at their sides, moving in perfect unison toward some destination I couldn't see. Among them I spotted the elderly couple from dinner, the attendant who'd made up my bed, the conductor whose voice I'd heard over the intercom, all walking, all asleep, or something like sleep. I banged on the windows, shouted their names. Nothing. They just kept walking, disappearing into the darkness beyond the train. Then I noticed something else. Footprints in the snow, leading from every door of the train, including the door nearest my roomette, which meant I ran back to my room. The door was open. I knew I'd closed it. Inside, the bed was empty, but there was an indentation in the mattress, the shape of a body. My body. On the pillow was a single strand of hair. My color. My length. I touched my head reflexively. My hair was all there, but somehow, impossibly, it was also on that pillow. The train lurched, started moving again, slow at first, then picking up speed. I looked out the window. The walking figures were gone, vanished into the snowy night. Within minutes, the train was back to full speed, racing through the darkness. I sat on my disturbed bed, trying to process what I'd seen. Then, one by one, I heard doors opening in the hallway. Footsteps, voices, normal sounds of people waking up and moving around. I peered out. The attendant was walking by, looking tired but normal. "Morning," he said with a yawn. "We'll be serving breakfast in about an hour." "Where?" I started, then stopped. What could I ask? Where were you? Where did everyone go? Why were you all walking in the snow? He looked at me strangely. "Everything okay, sir? Did we stop?" I managed. "During the night. Did the train stop?" He frowned. "Not that I know of. I've been on duty all night. We've been making good time." He continued down the hall before I could respond. I went to the dining car as soon as it opened. The elderly couple was there, same table as the night before. They waved me over. "Sleep well?" the woman asked as I sat down. "Not really," I admitted. "Did you notice anything unusual last night?" They exchanged glances. "Like what?" the man asked. "The train stopping. People getting off." They shook their heads. "Slept like logs," the woman said. "This mountain air, very soothing. But we weren't in the mountains yet. We were still in the plains." I knew because I'd been watching our progress on my phone's map. Except, I checked my phone. According to the GPS, we were approaching Denver. But that was impossible. We should have had another 12 hours at least. I looked out the window. Mountains. Definitely mountains. The landscape had changed overnight in ways that defied geography and physics. We arrived in Denver 3 hours later, a full half-day early. Nobody else seemed to notice or care. They collected their belongings and departed like everything was normal. I found a newspaper in the station. The date was right, but the headlines were all wrong. Stories about events I didn't remember. Names of politicians I'd never heard of. Small things, but unsettling. Like the world had shifted slightly while I wasn't looking. I took an Uber to my parents' house. They were happy to see me, but something was off. Photos on the mantel showed family vacations I didn't remember. My old room had posters for bands I'd never listened to. Everything was close to right, but not quite. Like a copy of a copy. Slightly degraded. Slightly wrong. I spent 3 days there before I couldn't take it anymore. The constant feeling that I was in the wrong place. The wrong version of reality. I flew back to Chicago. Couldn't bring myself to take the train. My apartment was the same but different. My job was the same but different. My life was the same but different. It's been 2 years now. I've mostly gotten used to it. The little inconsistencies. The memories that don't quite match reality. The feeling that I'm not where I'm supposed to be. But sometimes, late at night, I think about that train. About those figures walking through the snow. About the empty bed with my impression still in it. I wonder which version of me got off the train that night, and which version got back on. I wonder if somewhere, in the right reality, another me is wondering the same thing. I've thought about taking the train again. Maybe it would take me back. Maybe I could find my way home. But I'm afraid. Afraid that this time I might be the one walking through the snow. Eyes closed. Arms at my sides. Following the others to wherever they go when the train stops in the middle of the night. So I stay here. In this almost right world. This close enough life, and I try not to think about it. But on quiet nights, when I can't sleep, I still hear it. The sound of a train whistle in the distance, calling me back, calling me home. Epilogue. The connection. I never thought I'd share these stories. Never thought anyone would believe me. But last week, something happened that changed my mind. I was at a coffee shop, working on my laptop. A guy at the next table was on the phone, speaking quietly but urgently. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but I heard him say something that made my blood run cold. No, I'm telling you, the gas station was empty, but the security footage showed me talking to someone. A tall guy in a grey uniform. I turned to look at him. He was young, maybe early 20s, looked exhausted, haunted. When he hung up, I took a chance. "Excuse me," I said. I couldn't help but overhear. "This gas station, was it off Highway 49? His eyes widened. "How did you know?" "Because I've seen him too." We talked for 3 hours, compared stories, compared details. Everything matched. The maintenance uniform, the wrong face, the too many teeth. But then he told me something new, something that connected everything. "I did some research," he said, "about that gas station, about the guy who died there." "Ronald Marsh," I said. He nodded. "But that's not all. Marsh wasn't from around there. He moved to town in 1986. Guess where he moved from?" I shook my head. "Chicago." Specifically, he was a student at State University. Worked part-time at the campus library. My coffee cup rattled against the saucer as my hand shook. "And get this," he continued, "before he was a student, he had another job. In Denver. Working for the railroad. Specifically, maintaining sleeper cars on long-distance routes. The coffee shop seemed to spin around me. 3 locations. 3 entities. All connected by one man who died in 1987. "There's more," the guy said. "I found others online. People with similar experiences. Gas stations, libraries, trains, but also hospitals, hotels, parking garages. Always late at night. Always when they're alone. Always something that shouldn't be there." "How many?" I asked. "Dozens, maybe hundreds, all over the country, and they all trace back to places where Ronald Marsh lived or worked." He pulled out his phone and showed me a map. Red pins marked reported sightings. They formed a pattern across the United States. A network of hauntings all connected to one man. "But here's the really weird part," he said. "Marsh is still buried in his hometown cemetery." I checked. So whatever these things are, they're not him. Not exactly. Then what are they? He shrugged. Echoes? Copies? Fragments? I don't know. But I think when he died, he left pieces of himself behind, in all the places that mattered to him. And those pieces, they're still there, still working their shifts, still following their routines. But wrong, I added. Broken, distorted. Exactly. We exchanged contact information and promised to stay in touch, to share any new information we found, to warn others if we could. But as I walked home that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were missing something. Something important. Why were these encounters increasing? Why were more people seeing them? Why now? I thought about my experience on the train, about waking up in a world that wasn't quite right, about the feeling that reality had shifted. What if that's what's happening? What if every encounter, every sighting, every person who sees these things? What if we're all being slowly pulled into their world? A world where the dead keep working their shifts, where faces don't fit quite right, where trains arrive early and passengers walk through snow that shouldn't exist. What if we're not seeing ghosts? What if we're becoming them? I don't have answers, only questions. And late at night, when I can't sleep, I lie in bed and listen for footsteps that drag across library carpets, for train whistles in the distance, for doors that open when no one's there, for voices that whisper, "Not yet." And I wonder, when does yet become now? When do we stop being the ones who see? When do we become the ones who are seen? I think about Ronald Marsh, about all the places he worked, all the shifts he pulled, all the routines he followed, and I think about my own life, my own routines, my own places. Will someone see me someday? A distorted echo of who I was, still sitting at my desk, still typing these words, but wrong, always wrong. The thought keeps me awake at night, but maybe that's better. Maybe staying awake is the only way to stay myself, to stay here, to stay real. So I don't sleep much anymore. I drink coffee at all hours. I avoid quiet places after dark. I never work alone. And I share these stories, not because I think they'll help, not because I have solutions, but because maybe, if enough people know, if enough people watch, if enough people stay awake, maybe we can stop it. Maybe we can stay ourselves. Maybe we can keep the world from shifting any further into wrongness. Or maybe it's already too late. Maybe we've already shifted. Maybe this is already the wrong world. And somewhere, in the right one, the real versions of us are wondering where we went, wondering why we walk through their dreams, wondering why our faces don't look quite right. I don't know. I can't know. All I can do is watch, and wait, and wonder, and hope that when my time comes, when I finally close my eyes for the last time, I hope I don't wake up still working, still following my routine, still here but wrong, always wrong, forever wrong. But until then, I'll keep watching, keep listening, keep sharing these stories, because in the end, that's all we can do. Bear witness, stay awake, and hope the darkness doesn't notice us watching it back. The 24-hour laundromat. It was September of 2017. I was 22 years old and fresh out of college. The only job I could find was managing a 24-hour laundromat on the sketchy side of town. The pay was terrible, but it included a small apartment above the shop. I couldn't afford to be picky. My shift ran from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. 8 hours of watching washers spin and making sure nobody vandalized the place. Most nights were boring. A few late-night customers doing emergency loads. The occasional drunk person trying to sleep on the folding tables. Nothing I couldn't handle. This particular Friday night started quiet. The last customer left around 11:30. Just me, 40 washing machines, and the endless cycle of spin and drain. I settled behind the counter with my laptop and a thermos of coffee. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in that harsh, unnatural white glow. Around midnight, I noticed one of the machines had started by itself. Number 23, in the back corner. The digital display showed 37 minutes remaining. I checked my logbook. Nobody had used that machine all day. I walked over to investigate. The door was locked, the cycle running, but I could see through the glass window. The machine was empty. No clothes, no water, just the drum spinning in empty rotations. I tried to cancel the cycle, but the buttons didn't respond. The machine kept running. I figured it was a malfunction. Made a note to call the repair guy in the morning. Went back to my desk. 20 minutes later, another machine started. Number 17. Then number 31. Then number 8. One by one, machines were starting themselves all around the laundromat. All empty. All locked. All displaying different wash times. The noise was incredible. 40 machines running at once. Drums spinning, motors whirring. But no water flowing. No clothes tumbling. Just empty mechanical motion. I grabbed my phone to call my boss, but there was no signal. The landline was dead too. Just static. That's when I noticed the windows. They were fogged up, completely opaque with condensation. But that made no sense. It wasn't humid. The machines weren't using hot water. There was no steam. I walked to the front door to check outside. It wouldn't open. Not locked. Just wouldn't move. Like it was welded shut. The fog on the windows was getting thicker, darker, like something was pressing against the glass from outside. The machines were getting louder, spinning faster, the displays showing impossible times. 97 minutes, 248 minutes, 1,347 minutes. Then I saw something in machine number 23, the first one that had started. There was something inside now, dark fabric pressed against the glass. I moved closer. The fabric shifted. It wasn't fabric. It was hair. Long, wet, black hair, swirling around inside the drum. I stumbled backward, checked the other machines. They all had something in them now. Things that shouldn't be there. Things that couldn't be there. Machine 17 had what looked like teeth. Hundreds of them, tumbling over each other like coins. Machine 31 was full of eyes. Human eyes, blinking in unison as they spun around. Machine 8 had hands, just hands, reaching and grasping at nothing. I ran back to the counter, grabbed the baseball bat I kept for security. Not that it would help against whatever this was. The lights started flickering, not failing, flickering in sequence. Front to back, over and over, like a wave of darkness passing through the room. And in those moments of darkness, I could see them, figures standing between the machines, tall, impossibly thin, made of shadow and static. They were watching the machines, watching the things inside spin. Then one turned to look at me. It had no face. Just a smooth, dark surface where features should be. But I could feel it seeing me, feel its attention like cold water on my skin. It started moving toward me, not walking, drifting, gliding between the machines without disturbing the air. Others turned to follow. A dozen of them, 2 dozen, more, surrounding me. I swung the bat, but it passed right through them, like swinging at smoke. They got closer. I could smell them now, like wet fabric left too long in a machine. Mildew and decay and something else. Something chemical. Something wrong. One reached out with an arm that was too long, too jointed. Its finger touched my forehead. Ice shot through my skull. Images flooded my mind. The laundromat, but different. Older, darker, full of people who weren't quite right. They were washing things that shouldn't be washed. Memories, dreams, pieces of themselves, feeding them into the machines and watching them disappear. The machines were hungry, had always been hungry. This place was a crossing, a boundary, where the unwanted parts of people came to be cleaned away. But sometimes the machines kept what they were given, collected it, saved it, and sometimes, on nights like this, they gave it back, all at once. All wrong. The vision ended. I was on my knees, head spinning. The shadow figures were gone. The machines were slowing down. One by one, they clicked off. The fog on the windows faded. The lights stopped flickering. Everything returned to normal, except machine 23. It was still running, still had that hair swirling inside. I approached carefully. The display showed 1 minute remaining. I watched the seconds count down. 30, 31, 32, 33. The machine stopped. The lock clicked open. The door swung wide. Inside was a pile of wet, black hair, and underneath it, a note, written in shaky handwriting on laundromat receipt paper. Thank you for watching over them. Your shift is almost over. But first, you must choose. Take something with you, or leave something behind. The machines are hungry. They are always hungry. I looked around the empty laundromat, at the rows of silent machines, at the harsh fluorescent lights, at my reflection in the dark windows. I thought about all the things I wanted to wash away, the failures, the regrets, the parts of myself I hated. It would be so easy. Just load them in, press start, let the machines take them. But I remembered the vision, the people feeding pieces of themselves to the hungry machines. How empty they looked afterward. How wrong. I grabbed the hair from machine 23. It was cold and heavy in my hands. Someone else's discarded part. Someone else's loss. I carried it to the trash and threw it away. Then I went back to my desk and waited for morning. The sun came up at 6:03. My replacement arrived at 6:15. I handed over the keys and the logbook. Didn't mention what had happened. What was the point? But as I was leaving, I stopped at the door. Hey, I said. The machines. Don't let them run empty. He looked at me like I was crazy. What? Just... If a machine starts by itself, put something in it. Anything. A towel. A sock. Whatever. Don't let them run empty. I left before he could respond. Moved out of the apartment that same day. Found a new job. A day job. Never went back to that part of town. But sometimes I dream about it. The laundromat. The machines. The things inside them. And in my dreams, I'm still there. Still on shift. Still watching. And the machines are running. All of them. Full of things that used to be parts of people. And one of them, machine 23, has something of mine in it. Something I didn't know I'd lost until it was gone. Something I can't get back. Something the machines kept. Because the machines are hungry. They are always hungry. And they never forget a meal. The parking garage. It was November of 2019. I worked downtown for a tech startup that was trying too hard to be cool. Free kombucha in the break room. Ping pong tables nobody used. Motivational posters with fonts that hurt to read. The worst part was the parking. The company had a deal with a garage 6 blocks away. After 7 p.m., it was basically empty except for a few overnight workers like me. I usually stayed late debugging code. It was quieter after everyone left. I could actually think. This particular Thursday, I didn't leave until almost midnight. The elevator down to the garage was old and slow. It groaned and shuddered the whole way down. The doors opened on level B3, where I always parked. The garage was dimly lit. Half the fluorescents were out. The functioning ones buzzed and flickered. My footsteps echoed off the concrete as I walked to my car. Row J, space 47. Same spot every day, but my car wasn't there. The space was empty. I checked my phone. This was definitely where I'd parked. I even had a photo from that morning to prove it. I looked around. Maybe I'd parked somewhere else by mistake, but the garage was nearly empty. Only a handful of cars scattered across the vast concrete space. None of them mine. I started walking the rows methodically, checking every car, every space. The garage was bigger than I remembered. Row after row stretched into the darkness. K, L, M, N. How many rows were there? I'd never seen past P before. But here was Q, then R, then S. The letters kept going. AA, BB, CC. That couldn't be right. I turned around to go back, but the rows behind me had changed. Where there should have been letters, there were now numbers. 01, 02, 03. The ceiling felt lower, the walls closer, the air thicker. I was lost in a parking garage. How was that even possible? I tried to call security, but my phone had no signal. The screen showed an error message I'd never seen before. Location not found. I kept walking. What else could I do? The cars I passed got older as I went deeper. 90s models, 80s, 70s. Some I didn't recognize at all. Cars that looked wrong. Too long. Too many doors. Angles that hurt to look at. Then I heard an engine start. Somewhere ahead. The sound echoed off the concrete, making it impossible to locate. Headlights flashed in the distance. I ran toward them. Maybe someone could help. Maybe they knew the way out. But when I reached the source, the car was off. Dark, cold, like it had been sitting there for years. Dust covered the windshield. Rust eaten through the wheel wells. Another engine started. Behind me this time. More headlights. I spun around. Dark again. Then another. And another. All around me, cars were starting and stopping. Lights flashing on and off. A mechanical Morse code I couldn't read. The concrete under my feet was cracking. Grass and weeds pushing through. Like nature reclaiming the space. But wrong. The plants were grey, colourless, moving without wind. I ran, picked a direction and ran. The rows blurred past. Numbers and letters that made no sense. Characters from alphabets I didn't recognize. Symbols that seemed to squirm when I looked at them. The cars were getting worse. Not just old. Decayed. Melted. Fused together into automotive tumors. Metal and glass and rubber twisted into shapes that shouldn't exist. Some of them were breathing. I could see hoods rising and falling. Exhaust pipes wheezing. Headlights blinking like eyes. Then I saw people, or what used to be people, sitting in some of the cars, behind the wheels, in the back seats, not moving, just sitting. Their faces were wrong, features melted and reformed, like they'd been sitting there so long they'd become part of the cars. Skin fused to steering wheels, hands grown into dashboards, eyes replaced by headlights. One turned to look at me as I passed. Its mouth opened. The radio spoke. Level B, 347. Row. Space infinity. The voice was static and screams. I kept running. The garage kept going. Down and down and down. Spiral ramps that defied physics. Levels that folded in on themselves. Spaces that existed in more than 3 dimensions. My legs were burning. My lungs screaming. But I couldn't stop. Because the cars were following now. Rolling on flat tires. Engines coughing black smoke. Headlights painting my shadow on the walls. A parade of automotive corpses. And in them, those things that used to be people. Reaching for me with hands that were also gear shifts. Calling with voices that were also car alarms. Then I saw it. An exit sign. Glowing green in the distance. I sprinted toward it. The cars behind me howled. Metal scraping concrete. Horns blaring in harmony. A symphony of mechanical rage. The exit was a stairwell. I yanked the door open and dove through. Slammed it behind me. The stairs went up. Only up. No down option. I climbed. 1 flight. 2. 10. 20. My legs were jelly. My chest on fire. But I kept climbing. The sounds from the garage faded. Replaced by silence. Then by normal sounds. Traffic. Voices. City noise. I burst through a door and found myself on the street. 6 blocks from my office. Right where the garage entrance should be. But there was no garage. Just a vacant lot. Weeds growing through broken asphalt. A chain-link fence with a sign. Future site of downtown parking complex. Coming 2020. My car was parked on the street. Right in front of the lot. Keys in my pocket. Everything normal. I checked my phone. 12:17 a.m. Only 17 minutes had passed. But my fitness app showed I'd climbed 347 flights of stairs. Walked 26 miles. Burned 3,000 calories. My shoes were worn down to nothing. The soles completely gone. My feet bleeding through my socks. I drove home in a daze. Called in sick the next day. And the day after. When I finally went back to work, I took the bus. Couldn't bring myself to drive. Couldn't risk parking anywhere. I lasted 2 more weeks before quitting. Found a remote job. Work from home now. Never have to park anywhere. But sometimes, late at night, I hear engines starting outside my window. Look out and see headlights in the darkness. Cars that shouldn't be there. Driven by things that used to be people. And I know they're looking for me. The one who found the exit. The one who escaped the deepest levels. The one who knows what's down there. What's always been down there. Waiting in parking spaces that exist outside normal space. In rows labeled with dead languages. On levels that count down to infinity. I know because sometimes I check Google Maps. And for just a second, before the image loads properly, I can see it. The real map. The one that shows all the parking garages. All the levels, all the spaces, an infinite grid beneath every city, connected, growing, hungry, and in one of those spaces, marked with symbols that hurt to read, is a reservation. My name, my space, my car, waiting for me to come back, to park one more time, to join the others, to become part of the garage, part of the system, part of the machine that runs beneath everything, the engine that never stops, that never rests, that never forgets a customer. I won't go back. I'll never go back. But I know it's waiting, patient, eternal, inevitable, because everyone has to park somewhere. Eventually, the all-night diner. It was March of 2020, right before everything shut down. I was driving back from my mom's funeral. 12 hours of interstate through the Midwest. Nothing but cornfields and regret. It was around 2 a.m. when I saw the sign. Meg's Diner. Open 24 hours. Next exit. I needed coffee, food, anything to keep me awake for the last 3 hours home. I took the exit. The road was dark. No street lights. No other cars. Just my headlights cutting through the darkness. The diner appeared out of nowhere. A classic 1950s style building. Chrome and neon. Red vinyl and checkerboard floors. The parking lot was empty except for one semi-truck. I parked and went inside. A bell chimed as I opened the door. The interior was exactly what you'd expect. Red booth seats, a long counter with rotating stools, pie cases and coffee makers, a jukebox in the corner playing something old and sad. There was one customer, a trucker in a dirty cap, hunched over a cup of coffee at the counter. The waitress looked up from wiping down tables. She was maybe 60, with tired eyes and a name tag that said, Meg. Sit anywhere, Hon, she said. I'll be right with you. I took a booth by the window. The vinyl creaked under my weight. The table was that weird fake wood laminate that never quite looks clean. Meg brought me a menu and coffee without asking. The coffee was perfect. Hot and strong and exactly what I needed. Know what you want? She asked after a minute. Just eggs and toast, I said. Maybe some bacon. Coming right up. She walked back to the kitchen. I could hear her calling out the order, but I couldn't see anyone back there. No cook. No one else working. Just Meg. I sipped my coffee and stared out the window at my car. The only thing visible in the darkness. The trucker at the counter hadn't moved. Hadn't looked up, just sat there, curved over his coffee like a question mark. The jukebox clicked and whirred, started playing the same song again. Something about lost love and highways. My food arrived faster than seemed possible. Perfect eggs, crispy bacon, toast buttered just right. Anything else? Meg asked. No. This is great. Thank you. She smiled and went back to wiping tables. The same table. Over and over. Circular motions that never stopped. I ate in silence. The food was good. Too good. Exactly the way my mom used to make it. Even the way the eggs were slightly runny. The way the bacon curled at the edges. Details too specific to be coincidence. I looked up at Meg. She was still wiping that same table. Her movements mechanical, repetitive, like a video on loop. The trucker still hadn't moved. I watched him in the reflection of the window. His coffee cup never emptied, never refilled. just stayed at the same level. Steam rising in a pattern that repeated every 30 seconds. The jukebox played that same song, over and over, the needle never moving to the next track. I finished eating and checked my phone. 3:47 a.m. But that was wrong. I'd been here maybe 20 minutes. It had been 2 a.m. when I arrived. The clock on the wall agreed with my phone. 3:47. The minute hand clicked forward. 3:48. Then something impossible happened. The hand moved backward. 3:47 again. I watched it click forward. 3:48. Then back. 3:47. Forward. Back. Forward. Back. Time was stuck. Looping. Just like Meg's wiping. Just like the trucker's stillness. Just like the song. I stood up fast. Too fast. Knocked over my coffee. It spread across the table in slow motion. Then reversed. Flowed back into the cup. The cup righted itself. Full again. Steaming again. Like it never happened. "Everything okay, hon?" Meg asked. Still wiping. Still smiling. But her eyes were wrong now. Too wide. Too empty. Like doll eyes. "I need to go," I said. Reached for my wallet. "Oh no," she said. "You haven't had dessert." "I'm full, thanks. Everyone has room for pie." She was between me and the door now. I didn't see her move. She was just there. Still smiling. Still wrong. "I really need to go," I said. "The roads are dangerous at night," she said. "Better to wait until morning." "It is morning." "Is it?" She tilted her head. The movement was too smooth, too mechanical, like her neck was on a hinge. Time is funny here. Always has been. Meg's diner exists between the minutes, in the spaces time forgets about. I don't understand. You pulled off the highway at 2 a.m. You'll merge back on at 2:01. But here you can stay as long as you need. Forever, if you want. I looked at the trucker. Really looked at him. His clothes were from the 70s. The style. The wear. Even the smell of him was old. Decades of cigarettes and diesel. "How long has he been here?" I asked. "Oh, Bill. Hard to say. Time is funny here. In real time. Outside." Meg's smile flickered. "Since 1973. Give or take. Had a heart attack in his rig. Pulled off at the last second. Made it to the counter. Ordered coffee. And decided to stay. He's dead. Dead is relative. He's between. Like the diner. Like me. Like you could be." I backed toward the door. "I'm leaving. Your mother's waiting, you know." I froze. "What?" "She comes in sometimes. Orders the same eggs you just had. Sits in that booth right there. Waits." "You're lying." "Am I? How do you think I knew how to make them just right?" "She showed me. Said you'd be coming through. Said you'd need a good meal." My eyes burned with tears I'd been holding back for days. "She's dead. Dead is relative here. In the between spaces. The minute between 3:47 and 3:48. The exit between mile markers. The diner between destinations. You're insane. Maybe. Or maybe you're tired. Tired of driving. Tired of grieving. Tired of going back to an empty apartment and a life without her. She was right. I was tired. So goddamn tired. Stay, Meg said. Have some pie. Wait for her. She'll be here soon. She always comes when the jukebox plays that song. I listened to the music. Really listened. It was familiar. More than familiar. It was the song from her funeral. The one she'd requested. The one about lost love and highways. How? I whispered. Time is funny here. Past and future and present all mixed up. All you have to do is sit. Order some pie. Wait. And eventually, everyone comes to Meg's. The door felt so far away. The booth looked so comfortable. The coffee smelled so good. It would be easy. Just sit. Just wait. Just stay in the minute between minutes. Forever. But I thought about the trucker. 47 years of the same coffee. The same moment. The same song. Was that really better than grief? Was that really my mother waiting? Or just an echo, like Meg? Like this whole place? A between space filled with between people? I can't, I said. She wouldn't want this. Meg's smile finally fell. No one ever does. At first. But the road is long. And dark. And full of exits. You'll be back. I ran for the door. It felt like moving through molasses. Time stretching. Fighting me. The bell chimed as I pushed through. The parking lot was different. Dozens of cars now. All empty. All old. All waiting for drivers who sat inside. Eating food that never ran out. Drinking coffee that never cooled. Living in moments that never ended. I found my car and drove. Hit the highway at 85 miles per hour. The clock read 2:01 a.m. Just like Meg said, I drove 3 hours without stopping, without looking at exits, without thinking about diners or coffee or songs that played forever. But sometimes, on long drives, I see the signs. Meg's Diner, open 24 hours, different highways, different states, but always the same exit, always between mile markers, always there when I'm tired and sad and missing her. I don't stop. I won't stop. But I know it's there, in the spaces between minutes, full of people who couldn't let go, who chose the loop over the line, who picked forever over forward. And sometimes, late at night, when I can't sleep, I wonder, is she really there, waiting in a booth, ordering eggs, listening to that song? And would it really be so bad to see her again, even if it's not really her, even if it means staying forever? The road is long, and dark, and full of exits. And one day, I know, I'll be tired enough to take one, to park in that lot full of empty cars, to hear that bell chime, to sit at that counter, to order coffee that never ends, to wait for someone who never comes, or who's always been there, in the minute between minutes, in the space between spaces, in Meg's Diner, open 24 hours, forever. The night security job. It was January of 2021. I'd just been laid off from my third job in a year. The pandemic had wrecked everything. My savings were gone. My unemployment had run out. I was desperate. That's when I saw the ad. Night security guard needed. Immediate start. No experience required. The pay was decent. Better than decent, actually. Should have been my first red flag. The interview was weird. Just a phone call. 3 questions. Can you stay awake all night? Are you comfortable being alone? Do you follow instructions exactly? Yes to all 3. I started the next night. The building was downtown. One of those old office buildings from the 1920s. Art Deco architecture. Marble floors. Brass fixtures. Beautiful during the day. Different at night. My shift was midnight to 8 a.m. The day guard, an older guy named Carl, met me in the lobby. First night, he asked. I nodded. Listen close. This job is easy if you follow the rules. He handed me a laminated card. The rules written at the top in bold letters. 1. Complete rounds every hour on the hour. 2. Check all doors. They must remain locked. 3. Never use the elevators after 3 a.m. 4. If you hear music from the 13th floor, do not investigate. 5. The basement is off limits. 6. If someone knocks on the front door between 3:33 and 3:34 a.m., do not answer. 7. Keep the lights on in the lobby at all times. 8. Do not sleep. Ever. Seems straightforward, I said. Carl gave me a long look. Just follow the rules. Exactly. No matter what. He left without another word. I settled into the security desk. Bank of monitors showing empty hallways. Sign-in log that hadn't been used in months. Coffee maker that looked older than the building. The first few hours were fine. Boring, even. I did my rounds. Checked doors. Walked the empty halls. Normal security stuff. At 3 a.m., I noticed the elevators. All 3 indicators showed they were on the 13th floor. I hadn't touched them. No one else was in the building. They just went up on their own. Rule 3. Never use the elevators after 3 a.m. I took the stairs for my next round. At 3:15, I heard it. Music. Faint but clear. Big band. Swing music. Coming from above. From the 13th floor. Rule 4. If you hear music from the 13th floor, do not investigate. I stayed at my desk. Tried to ignore it. But the music got louder. I could hear voices now. Laughter. Clinking glasses. Like a party. A 1920s party happening 13 floors above me. The monitors showed the 13th floor hallway. Empty. Dark. But the music continued. At 3:32, I watched the clock. Rule 6 haunted me. Who knocks on a door at exactly 3:33 a.m.? Why just that 1 minute? 3:33. A knock echoed through the lobby. Slow. Deliberate. 3 knocks. Then 3 more. Then 3 more. I could see the front doors on the monitor. Nobody there. But the knocking continued. Getting louder. More insistent. The glass doors shook with each impact. I gripped the edge of the desk. Watched the clock. 3:34. The knocking stopped. Silence. Just my breathing and the distant music from the 13th floor. I went to check the doors. Still locked. But there were handprints on the glass. From the outside. Handprints that weren't there before. Too many handprints. Dozens of them. All different sizes. All pressing against the glass like they were trying to get in. I backed away. Returned to my desk. Tried to focus on the monitors. At 4 a.m., something happened on the cameras. The feed from the 13th floor changed. For just a second. Instead of an empty hallway, I saw a ballroom, full of people in 1920s clothing, dancing, drinking, laughing, then static, then the empty hallway again. But in that brief moment, I saw something else. Some of the party guests had noticed the camera, were looking directly at it, at me. Their faces were wrong, too pale, too still, eyes too dark, smiles too wide, and one of them waved. The music stopped abruptly at 5 a.m. The elevators returned to the ground floor. Ding! All three opened at once. I watched them on the monitors. Empty. But the lights inside were flickering, and the back walls were covered in scratches, like claw marks. Fresh ones. I did my 5 a.m. rounds carefully, took the stairs, avoided the 13th floor entirely. Everything seemed normal, until I reached the 7th floor. The hallway was different, older. The modern carpet was gone, replaced with vintage 1920s patterns. The fluorescent lights were now brass fixtures with Edison bulbs. The office doors had frosted glass windows with painted names. Henderson and Associates, Accounting. Dr. Mortimer Wright, Psychiatrist. Madame Zelda, Spiritual Advisor. Names and businesses that couldn't have existed. This building had been renovated dozens of times. These offices were from a different era. I touched one of the doors. It was real, solid, cold. Through the frosted glass, I could see movement, shadows of people working, at 5 a.m., in offices that shouldn't exist. I ran back to the stairwell, but the stairs going down were different too. Older, wooden instead of concrete, creaking under my weight. I descended carefully. The 6th floor was normal, modern, empty, like it should be. But I could still hear the 7th floor above me. Typewriters clacking, phones ringing, voices discussing business in accents from a century ago. I made it back to the lobby without further incident. Checked the monitors. The 7th floor showed normal, modern hallways. Empty. But I knew what I'd seen, what I'd heard. At 6 a.m., I noticed something else. The basement door. Rule 5. The basement is off limits. The door was open. Just a crack. But definitely open. I knew I'd checked it earlier. It had been locked. Dead bolted. Now it was ajar. And there was light coming from below. Soft. Flickering. Like candlelight. I approached slowly. The rules said not to go in the basement. They didn't say anything about closing the door. I reached for the handle. That's when I smelled it. Copper. Salt. Something organic and wrong. Blood. Old blood. And something else. Incense. Candle wax. Chalk. The door swung open wider. Not by my hand. Like something was inviting me. I could see the top of the stairs. Stone steps leading down into flickering darkness. And on the walls, symbols. Drawn in something dark. Something that might have been blood. Symbols that hurt to look at. That seemed to move when I wasn't looking directly at them. From below, a voice. No. Voices. Chanting. In a language I didn't recognize. Didn't want to recognize. The rhythm was wrong. Made my teeth ache. Made my eyes water. I slammed the door shut. Turned the deadbolt. Backed away. The chanting continued. Muffled but still audible. Getting louder. More voices joining in. Too many voices for a basement. Too many voices for a building. Too many voices, period. At 7 a.m., Carl arrived early. Found me at the security desk, gripping the rules card. "Rough night?" he asked. I just stared at him. "You heard the music?" I nodded. "Saw the 7th floor change?" Another nod. "The basement? Who's down there?" I whispered. Carl sighed. Poured himself coffee from the ancient machine. "Same people who are always down there. Have been since 1923. That's impossible. Lot of impossible things in this building. That's why the rules." "What happened in 1923? He was quiet for a long moment. "Big party. New Year's Eve. Height of the roaring 20s. Everyone who was anyone was here. Champagne. Music. Dancing." He sipped his coffee. "Then midnight hit. 1924 began. And something went wrong. The party stopped. Stopped. But didn't end. Never ended. The guests are still here. Still celebrating. Still waiting for a midnight that already came and went. That's insane. Is it? You saw them. Heard them. They're as real as you and me. Just stuck. Caught between 1 year and the next. Between one moment and the next. The basement." His face darkened. "That's different. Older. The building was built on something. A place where people did things. Bad things. Before the city. Before anything. The foundation covers it, but doesn't stop it." "Stop what?" "The rituals. They continue. Every night. Have for centuries. The building just gave them a roof." I stood up. Started gathering my things. "I quit." "No, you don't. Watch me." "You can't. Check your phone." I did. The date was wrong. It showed January 1st. But it had been January 15th when I started. "Time gets funny here," Carl said. "Especially for night guards. You work the shift, you become part of it. Part of the building. Part of the rules. That's not possible. Check your bank account." I did. 14 deposits. All from the same company. All dated January 1st. 14 January 1 STS. How many nights have I been here? Depends how you count. In here. 1 night. Out there. 2 weeks. The night shift exists in its own time. Always midnight to 8 a.m. Always the same night. Always January 1st. I want to leave. Then leave. Walk out. But you'll be back at midnight. You always are. We all are. I looked at him. Really looked. His uniform was old. The style from the 80s. His security badge showed a photo of a much younger man. "How long have you been here?" I asked. "Day shift." "Since 1987. Same day. Every day. 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. January 1st, 1987. That's 34 years. Yes. And no. It's 1 day. Always 1 day. I age outside but not inside. I go home to a family that gets older while I stay the same. My kids are older than me now. My wife." He trailed off. "Why don't you quit?" "Same reason you won't. Can't. The building needs guards. Always has. Someone to watch. Someone to follow the rules. Someone to keep things contained." Contained. What do you think happens if no one's here? If no one follows the rules? If the doors unlock? If the elevator works after 3? If someone answers that knock? I thought about the handprints on the glass, the scratches in the elevator, the chanting from the basement. They get out. All of them. Every resident of every time that got stuck here. Everything that was here before. Everything that will be here after. All at once. All in your world. He finished his coffee. So we guard. We watch. We follow the rules. Night after night. Day after day. Same shift. Same time. Forever. There has to be a way out. Maybe. Probably. But would you risk it? Would you risk letting them out to save yourself? I thought about it. About the party guests with their wrong faces. About the offices that shouldn't exist. About the voices in the basement. All of them waiting. All of them trying to get out. No, I admitted. Then welcome to the real job. It's not about guarding the building from intruders. It's about guarding the world from the building. He stood up. Straightened his tie. My shift starts in 10 minutes. Same as every day. You can leave now. Go home. Sleep. Live your life. But at midnight, you'll be back. You'll always be back. I left. Walked out into the morning sun. Went home. Tried to sleep. Tried to forget. But at 11:45 p.m., I was getting dressed. At 11:50, I was driving. At 11:55, I was parking. At midnight, I was at my desk, ready for my shift. My only shift. My eternal shift. January 1st. Forever. Carl was right. I can't quit. Won't quit. Someone has to follow the rules. Someone has to keep them contained. Someone has to guard the boundaries between what is and what was and what should never be. That someone is me. Every night. Same night. Forever. Or until someone else answers that want to add. Takes my place. Lets me finally move past January 1st. But who would take such a job? Who would be desperate enough? Foolish enough? Brave enough? Maybe you. Maybe you're reading this. Maybe you need the work. The pay is good. The job is simple. Just follow the rules. Exactly. Always. Forever. The rest stop bathroom. It was August of 2022. I was driving from Phoenix to Vegas. 6 hours through the desert. Nothing but heat and sand and the occasional Joshua tree. I'd made the drive before. Knew where to stop. Where not to stop. But that night, things were different. A massive accident had closed the 93. Detour after detour led me onto back roads I didn't recognize. My GPS kept recalculating, sending me deeper into nowhere. It was around 1 a.m. when I saw the sign. Rest area, 1 mile. My bladder was screaming. I'd been holding it for an hour, waiting for somewhere safe, somewhere lit, somewhere normal. The rest stop was none of those things. A single building in the middle of nothing. One flickering light pole. No other cars. No trucks. Just empty parking spaces and desert wind. I almost kept driving. Should have kept driving. But nature was calling too loudly. I parked close to the building. Left my engine running. Grabbed my phone for light. The building was older than old. Concrete blocks painted institutional beige. Metal roof eaten by rust. A door marked men and another marked women. No family restroom. No vending machines. No maps or tourist information. Just toilets in the desert. I pushed open the men's room door. It groaned on rusted hinges. The smell hit me immediately. Not the usual bathroom smell. Something else. Sweet. Chemical. Wrong. The lights were those old buzzing fluorescents. Half of them dead. The others flickering like strobes. 3 stalls. 3 urinals. 3 sinks. All in a row. All identical. All wrong. The tiles were white. Too white. Hospital white. Laboratory white. They seemed to glow in the flickering light. I approached the urinals. Just needed to pee and leave. 2 minutes max. But something made me check the stalls first. Don't know why. Instinct maybe. The first stall was empty. Normal. Dirty but normal. The second stall was empty too. But the toilet was full of something black. Thick. Tar-like. Still bubbling slightly. The third stall door was locked. From the inside. I could see feet underneath. Work boots. Not moving. "Hey," I called out. "You okay in there?" No answer. The feet didn't shift. Didn't twitch. I bent down to look closer. The boots were old. Covered in dust. The laces rotted through. And they weren't touching the ground. Hanging. Swaying slightly. I backed away. Someone had died in there. How long ago? Why hadn't anyone found them? I turned to leave. Call 911 from my car. Let someone else deal with this. But the door wouldn't open. Not locked. Not stuck. Just wouldn't move. Like it had become part of the wall. Solid. Immovable. I pulled out my phone. No signal. Of course. The screen was acting weird too. Static. Interference. Like something was jamming it. The lights went out. All at once. Complete darkness. Then, from the locked stall, a sound. Breathing. Wet. Labored. But the feet were still hanging. Still swaying. "Hello." My voice cracked. The breathing got louder. And something else. Dripping. Slow. Steady. Like a leaky faucet. But thicker. The lights flickered back on. Strobe-like. Flash. Dark. Flash. Dark. In those moments of light, I saw things. The black substance in the second toilet was rising. Overflowing. Spreading across the floor like living oil. The mirrors above the sinks were wrong. Not reflecting the room. Showing somewhere else. Somewhen else. The same bathroom but different. Cleaner. Newer. With someone standing at the sink. Someone who wasn't me. Flash. Dark. The locked stall door was opening. Inch by inch. The feet still visible below. Still hanging. But the door opening anyway. Flash. Dark. More people in the mirrors now. A crowd. All standing at the sinks. All washing their hands. All with their backs to me. All wrong. Flash. Dark. The black substance had reached my shoes. Cold. So cold it burned. Climbing up my legs like it had purpose. Had intent. The stall door was fully open now. Inside. I don't want to describe what was inside. What was hanging. What had been human once. Long ago. But wasn't any more. Couldn't be any more. Not with that many changes, that many alterations, that many improvements. It looked at me, with eyes that had multiplied, split, spread across its face like spider eggs, all blinking in sequence, all focused on me. Its mouth opened, too many teeth, too many tongues, too many words in too many languages. But I understood one phrase, repeated over and over. Join us in the spaces between. The black substance was at my waist now, pulling, dissolving, remaking. I could feel my legs changing, becoming something else, something better, something worse. The things in the mirrors all turned around, dozens of them, previous visitors, previous victims, all changed, all improved, all waiting. Their faces were like the hanging thing's face, multiple eyes, multiple mouths, multiple versions of themselves collapsed into one impossible form. They pressed against the glass. Spider-webbing cracks appeared. The barrier between their side and mine was breaking. The hanging thing stepped down. Its feet touched the ground, walked toward me. Each step was wrong. Too many joints, bending in directions that defied anatomy. But purposeful, deliberate, hungry. The black substance was at my chest. My heart was slowing, changing rhythm, beating in patterns that matched the flickering lights. The hanging thing reached out. Its hands were gardens of fingers, blooming, spreading, reaching. That's when I heard it. My car horn, blaring, constant, like someone was leaning on it. The sound cut through everything. The hanging thing paused. The black substance stopped rising. The mirror things pulled back. My car horn kept blaring, loud, insistent, alive. I don't remember moving, don't remember breaking free. But suddenly I was at the door. It opened easily, like it had never been stuck. I ran. The parking lot was full now. Dozens of cars, all old, all empty, all covered in dust. Their headlights turned on as I passed. Engines starting, radios blaring static. But no drivers. Never any drivers. My car was still running, still honking, but I wasn't touching the horn. I jumped in and drove, pedal to the floor, into the desert, away from the rest stop, away from the things that waited in bathroom stalls. In the rearview mirror, I could see them, standing in the parking lot. The hanging thing, the mirror things, other things, all watching, all waiting, all knowing I'd be back, because the black substance was still on me, in me, part of me. I could feel it under my skin, moving, growing, changing me from the inside. I drove for hours, finally found the main highway. Made it to Vegas just as the sun came up. But I was different, wrong. The black substance had left its mark. Sometimes, when I look in mirrors, I see too many reflections. Sometimes, my shadow has too many arms. Sometimes, I dream of bathroom stalls and hanging things and the spaces between. And sometimes, late at night, I feel the pull, the need, the hunger, to go back, to finish what was started, to join the others in the rest stop, to hang in a stall, to wait in a mirror, to spread the black substance to new visitors, new victims, new recruits. I fight it, every day, every night. But I'm losing. The changes are accelerating. My eyes are starting to split. My fingers are growing new joints. My thoughts are becoming multiple. Soon, I'll have to go back. Have to take my place. Have to become what I was meant to become. What we all become. Eventually. In the spaces between. In rest-stop bathrooms. In the dark. Waiting. Changing. Hungry. Always hungry. Epilogue. The pattern. I've been collecting these stories for 5 years now. Ever since my experience at the laundromat. At first, I thought I was alone. Thought I was crazy. But then I started finding others. Online forums. Support groups. Dark corners of the internet where people whisper about impossible things. We call ourselves the touched. People who've been to the places between. Who've seen what waits in the spaces normal people ignore. Who've come back changed. There are thousands of us. Maybe tens of thousands. All over the world. All with similar stories. Different locations, but the same wrongness. Different entities, but the same hunger. We've been mapping it. The pattern. The network. Gas stations, libraries, trains, laundromats, parking garages, diners, office buildings, rest stops. All the places that exist on the edges. The late-night spaces. The in-between zones. The territories where reality gets thin. They're connected. All of them. Part of something larger. Something older. Something that's always been here. Waiting. We compare notes. Share experiences. Try to understand. Some of us have theories. Dimensional bleeds. Temporal anomalies. Psychic manifestations. But deep down, we all know the truth. These things, these places, these entities, they're not invading our world. We're invading theirs. Every 24-hour business. Every late-night shift. Every empty space that should have people but doesn't. We pushed into territories that were never meant for us. And now the boundaries are breaking down. The researcher in our group, Dr. Sarah Chen, has a hypothesis. She thinks it started with artificial light. With our refusal to let darkness have its time. We lit up the night. Extended our hours. Created spaces that exist outside natural rhythms. And in doing so, we created gaps. Cracks. Places where the old darkness could seep through. Where things that once owned the night could reclaim their territory. But it's accelerating. More stories every year. More touched every month. More places becoming thin. The entities are learning too. Adapting. Getting better at mimicking us. At luring us. At changing us. Some of the touched don't fight it. They go back. Give in. Become part of the network. We lose contact with them. But sometimes, in new stories, we recognize them. The gas station attendant with too many teeth. The librarian with the blurred face. The security guard who follows rules that shouldn't exist. They were us once. Now they're something else. Something in between. Part of the infrastructure of wrongness. I'm writing this as a warning. And as a guide. And maybe as a goodbye. Because the changes are accelerating in me too. 5 years since the laundromat. 5 years of fighting. 5 years of pretending to be normal. But I can't pretend anymore. My reflection doesn't match my movements. My shadow falls the wrong way. My dreams are full of empty machines and hungry spaces. I know what's coming. Know where I'll end up. Back at that laundromat. Behind the counter. Watching the machines. Waiting for the next night shift worker. The next person to stumble into the spaces between. The next one to touch the network. To see the truth. To join us. It's not evil. Not exactly. It's just different. A different way of existing. A different kind of life. Or maybe a different kind of death. I don't know anymore. But I want to leave something behind. These stories. This warning. This map of dark territories. So you'll know. So you'll understand. So maybe you'll be more careful than we were. Avoid the night shifts. Skip the 24-hour places. Stay in the light. Stay with people. Stay in the spaces that belong to us. Because the other spaces, the in-between spaces, the wrong spaces, they're hungry. They're waiting. They're spreading. And they never forget the ones who find them. Who see them. Who touch them. Who become them. Like me. Like all of us. Eventually. In the end, we all work the night shift. We all find the spaces between. We all become part of the pattern. The network. The wrongness. It's just a matter of time. Of place. Of that one wrong turn. That one late night. That one moment when reality gets thin. And something else gets through. Something that's always been here. Waiting. Watching. Hungry. So be careful out there. In the dark. In the empty places. In the spaces between. Because once you see them. Once they see you. There's no going back. Only forward. Into the wrongness. Into the network. Into the night that never ends. Where we'll all meet again. Eventually. All of us. The touched. The changed. The ones who work the shifts that shouldn't exist. In the places that shouldn't be. Forever. The echo tank. I work at a large zoo on the edge of the city. People come here every day with their kids, smiling, taking photos, laughing as they watch penguins waddle, or monkeys swing from ropes. I work behind the scenes. I'm a junior technician in the animal welfare department. It's not a glamorous job. I check water levels, test temperatures, log daily reports. Sometimes I fix broken heaters or refill feed dispensers. I don't even work directly with animals most of the time. But I love this job. There's something peaceful about staying hidden while helping from the shadows. And I've always liked animals more than people anyway. Everything changed 3 weeks ago. It started with a new assignment. An assignment that wasn't on my regular schedule. It came from someone higher up, someone I'd never met before. The place underground. One day, after my morning round, I got a call on my walkie. It wasn't the usual voice. It was calm, deep, too calm, honestly. "Daniel, report to sub-level 3 for a maintenance check," it said. I didn't even know we had a sub-level 3. We had 2 known basements under the zoo, one for supplies and one for medical. Sub-level 3 wasn't on the maps. I checked with my boss. He looked confused. Then his face changed like someone had whispered something into his ear. He forced a smile and said, "Just go. Do what they ask. Don't ask questions." I felt strange walking down the emergency staircase behind the reptile house. No one ever used it. It was dusty, cold, and the further I went, the worse it smelled. When I reached the 3rd basement floor, there was a heavy steel door. No sign, just a red light blinking next to a black keypad. I was about to turn back when the door opened by itself. The echo tank. Inside, the air was thick, wet, like I'd stepped into a cave full of mold and ocean salt. A man in a black lab coat was waiting for me. He didn't smile. He didn't say his name. "You're here to clean the echo tank," he said flatly. "Echo tank." He handed me gloves, a scraper, and a bottle of clear liquid. "It only wakes up at night. It's safe now. Just scrape the walls, pour the cleaner, and leave," he said. Before I could ask anything, he led me down a narrow hallway. It was lit by dim green lights. We stopped in front of a round glass room. It looked like a giant fishbowl, but it wasn't filled with fish. There was black water, still, silent, and echoing from the glass was a faint hum, not from any machine. It sounded like something humming, something trying to sing. I walked in slowly. The door sealed behind me with a hiss. Something in the water. I crouched near the tank and scraped the grime from the glass. Strange shapes were drawn in the dirt, like fingerprints or claw marks. I poured the cleaning liquid. As the grime cleared, I saw something deep in the water. A shadow, floating, not moving. It looked like a person. No, it looked like a child. Hair drifting around its head. But its body was too long, its arms were too thin, and its eyes were wide open, glowing faintly. I blinked. When I looked again, it was gone. I hurried out of the chamber. My chest was tight. I couldn't breathe properly until I was 3 floors up. Something in the water. I crouched near the tank and scraped the grime from the glass. Strange shapes were drawn in the dirt, like fingerprints or claw marks. I poured the cleaning liquid. As the grime cleared, I saw something deep in the water. A shadow, floating, not moving. It looked like a person. No, it looked like a child. Hair drifting around its head. But its body was too long. Its arms were too thin, and its eyes were wide open, glowing faintly. I blinked. When I looked again, it was gone. I hurried out of the chamber. My chest was tight. I couldn't breathe properly until I was 3 floors up.